Welcome to the Divershefy Inspiring Leaders Podcast. Our guest today is Nisha Paramjothi. Nisha is a seasoned leader with over 2 decades of experience, spanning global banking, strategy, and consulting, as well as entrepreneurship. She has led complex transformation initiatives across financial services, digital platforms, and technology-driven businesses, working closely with boards, senior management teams, and regulators across Asia. Today, she is the co-founder of nPrivacy, an AI-powered data privacy and governance platform where she focuses on helping organizations adopt AI responsibly while balancing innovation, risk, and trust. Her career has been shaped by navigating leadership transitions from large institutions to advisory roles to building and scaling a startup, with a consistent emphasis on sound judgment, governance, and long-term value creation. Over her executive and entrepreneurial roles, Nisha is deeply committed to purposeful leadership and building resilient organizations. She believes the most effective leaders are those who can remain steady in uncertainty, make thoughtful decisions with incomplete information, and create clarity during moments of change. At her core, Nisha is driven by the belief that leadership is not defined by titles or visibility, but by responsibility and by leaving organizations, teams, and systems stronger than she found them. A warm welcome, Nisha, to the podcast.
Thank you. Very happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation ahead.
You have moved across banking, consulting, entrepreneurship. So, how has your definition of leadership evolved through these transitions?
So, for me, I've transitioned through multiple career leadership roles. My definition of leadership as such has shifted from what I would call execution to judgment. Sort of early in banking, leadership is about delivering results within existing ecosystems. Consulting, however, requires you to step back, build credibility quickly, and influence without the formal high structures of reporting. As a founder, you have to make decisions with imperfect data sets. You are sort of finding your way a little bit in terms of growing the business and impact and sort of living with the consequence and impact of those decisions. Now, while I think different facets of my career have given me different responsibilities in leadership, what has stayed constant is responsibility. It is about owning your actions and owning the outcomes, right? Regardless of context.
What was the most difficult mindset shift when moving from a structured corporate environment into consulting and then into building your own company?
So, in corporate setting, decisions are cushioned by existing ecosystems and frameworks. In consulting, you have to build credibility and empathy with the client quickly. In corporate settings, you typically have generally a very good view of the data sets that you cover. In consulting, you need to build knowledge of new data sets very quickly to build that rapport with the client. And obviously, in building a new startup and being a new founder, it is about grappling with a lot of uncertainties and having that imperfect data set. And to me, it is about making informed decisions within that imperfect data set and about, making impactful outcomes and owning those decisions and being able to assess and extend judgment to make sure that you are making the right decisions that drive the right outcomes.
Yeah, so following up on the word leadership judgment, looking
Mm.
back, which experience most shaped your leadership judgment rather than just your technical skills?
Again, it's being a startup founder, right? You are sort of in a completely new space. Again, data privacy, AI governance is a very new field. There are new sort of perspectives that continue to surface every day. And while we see, or rather, we saw an opportunity to build a meaningful product that addressed the market gap, there is a lot of uncertainty. And to me, that leadership, it is about, jumping in or almost eyes closed, You are in a leadership role, but you're also the arms and legs of the organization. You need to roll up your hands, get your hands dirty, and there is a lot of uncertainty, and you rely on the judgment and expertise that you've collected from your years of experience. But ultimately, it's about having that conviction and responsibility to make those decisions and taking the organization, and yes, it's a very small organization, with you, and making sure everyone feels sort of part of the team and part of the journey that you're on.
Yeah, so decision making you're just talking about, that depends also on what kind of level of decision making we're talking about, right? So there's decision making as an entrepreneur, you take decisions for yourself. If you're in a big corporate environment, you might have to make decisions in a very large and maybe big budget kind of decisions. So they can be very high stake. And also as a board member, right, you're taking decisions on behalf of the company, or at
Mhm.
least you're voting for a certain decision on behalf of the company. So in this high stake decision making, where you have incomplete information, how do you do that?
So first you learn to ask the right questions, right? So the thing about being in corporate, I guess the good thing about being in corporate or in consulting is that there is a plethora of information that you can ask, right? And it's about having that clarity and judgment to firstly ask the right questions without just jumping into making a decision. And sometimes it's also about asking the hard questions, right? Yes, well, you need to build consensus and getting people behind the decisions that you're making. It is also your job and your responsibility to sometimes ask the difficult questions and make sure you've got enough data points in front of you. You exercise sound judgment, and then you make a decision, and you are then responsible for your decision and the outcomes of that.
Absolutely agree. Especially as a board member, you have to be willing to stand up and ask the right questions, even if they're uncomfortable.
Yes,
Then
and
it's
sometimes
very critical.
yeah. And sometimes you are taking a decision that's a contrarian decision to everyone else. And it is about owning those decisions. Ultimately, as I said at the start, it is about responsibility. And ultimately, you are responsible for your decisions and ultimately the actions that transpire from that decision.
Right. So, and here's where also, there's a difference between a distinguished leader who has, who is making strong judgments and those who are just going by their experience or expertise. Well, how do you see the difference?
So for
How does a distinguished leader kind of stand out?
A distinguished leader is one that it is also about, a people organization, right? It's making decisions and taking the organization and the people with you. Yes, you rely on your experience, your expertise, your technical knowledge, but ultimately, all of being in corporate, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're in consulting, these are all people-centric businesses. And ultimately, it is about creating an impact in an organization and leaving it in a better place than when you left. And to me, that is the hallmark of a differentiated and distinguished leader where you've thought about the people aspect of it, right? What will
Mm.
your decision do to impact them? How do you effect change in a meaningful way that, takes the organization along with you? And how can, if you were to then step back, how does that organization show the value from your contribution? And does that contribution sort of outlive your presence within the organization?
So, a question, do you have an example of how decision-making mindset translate into board and advisory roles, especially during periods of uncertainty? Have you actually, worked with boards and in advisory roles where that was really hard decisions had to be made in a context where you couldn't have all the information needed?
Yes, and we've been through sort of many drastic shifts and actions over the last few years. Obviously, we had the pandemic. You've seen very large technological shifts, especially with AI driving large changes within organizations. A lot of sort of menial, low-level functions are slowly being replaced by automation and AI. So how do you make that decision? Very simply, talking to an organization about how AI can augment certain functions in terms of addressing objectives, whether it's revenue ups, scaling up revenue or reducing cost or improving efficiencies and productivity. There is obviously a human cost to that. element in terms of, okay, if these functions are automated, what happens to the existing way the processes are done? And that's something that you really sort of need to think about as well. How do you, account for the people that could potentially be displaced and helping them upskill and find a new home in the organization? So while you don't necessarily have all the data points, you know tangibly what sort of, I guess, the financial objectives are, but making that decision with responsibility and with conviction, it is about the human aspect of that as well. How do you take into account the human side and making sure your decisions are made responsibly?
Yeah, so we are living through a world of big transition in many aspects, including AI, including market volatility and
Mhm.
regulations. Obviously, leaders have to make choices that are hard to make, but what are the things that you saw people do make wrong choices during these periods?
It is sometimes it's also jumping the gun, and I appreciate sometimes decisions have a deadline, right? You've got a time frame to make a decision, and decisions need to be made, or else there are consequences. I get that, but there is a balance to be had between jumping the gun, having knee-jerk reactions, letting emotion perhaps cloud that decision making, and you're in your absolute right to react emotionally to an external perspective or development that has arose rather, and requires a decision to be made. You're absolutely right to be emotional and you should not be suppressing anything, but take a step back. Take a deep breath, take a step back and say, I don't need to react to this now. Let me process everything that has happened. Let me clearly understand the decision that I have to make, understand my choices. Have I thought through all the possible choices that I have to make? Because when you jump the gun, you sometimes overlook certain choices that you could have made that could have led to outcomes. Better or not, you will never know, but it could have led to a different outcome. So to me, it is about when you have to make a decision, especially one with large consequences, take time out, take a breath, take a step back, understand the choice spectrum, and then understand the data points you have, what you have to work with. Yes, it's not always a perfect data set. There are always uncertainties, there are always unknowns, but you are responsible and ultimately you own that decision. So when you make that decision, it is with the full conviction that I have made the best decision in this possible time with the information that I have, and I have tried to minimize the fallout and hopefully create better outcomes for all stakeholders in the equation.
Yeah, so specifically, I think talking about boards now, trying to figure out how to respond to AI and all the changes that come with it, where to go slow, where to go fast. You don't want to miss the boat, but at the same time, you don't want to rush decisions, especially at the board level where they have, big consequences on all levels. So does it take, how do we maintain trust, credibility, and calm, especially in the boardroom? During these kind of periods where COVID, AI, and other major disruptions, and now trade tariffs, all kinds of uh, political decisions that are being made actually have an impact on the organization, and the board has to decide how to move, when to move. So, what are your advice for board level leaders on that?
Again, information is everything. So try and equip yourself with as much information as you can and try and understand the impact of the various decision choices that you have to make, right? As I mentioned, there are always multiple paths forward, and it's important to understand the impact. Every decision has its pros and cons. Every decision has its consequences and fallouts. It is up to a board member to uphold that responsibility to fully understand the impact of those decisions and then making, as I said, the best sound decision for the organization at that time. Yes, there might be casualties, but collectively you have made the best decision that will sort of advance your business objectives, address any immediate concerns that you might have, and hopefully minimize any fallout or repercussions that could be negative to the organization. It is really about understanding your choices and the impact that it can make.
So, as an AI leader, what would be the thing you would like to see in the boardroom happen? Because you have a certain perspective, right? As a somebody who understands AI deeply, but many board members don't necessarily have that kind of depth of experience about AI, cybersecurity, data security, and so on. Many do board some extended board training on these topics, but still, how much can you get trained in like a weekend or maybe 5 days versus somebody who is actually living and breathing AI? So, as somebody who is like very deeply into AI, what would you like to see happen in the boardroom? How do board members navigate that specific topic?
Okay. So firstly, to the point on boards, right? And this is why I like to see diversity in boards where every board member brings a different skill set. And if I was sitting in the boardroom, yes, I'd bring that credibility, expertise, and experience in terms of speaking with AI. Now, AI is not a magic tool or one that sort of magically augments multiple functions. It is a good augmenter of productivity and decision making, in that it is a tool that one can use to leverage to make better decisions, right? Whether it is better data sets, whether it is sort of trying to understand the different outcomes that could potentially arise. It is not meant to make decisions for you. It is there as a tool to help you understand your decision tree a little bit better and what are the consequences from that. Now, how much should boards be leveraging AI? It should always be, as I said, an augmentation tool, not a decision making tool in itself. If you ask the question, how should organizations think about embracing AI? It is really about what business objectives do the organization want to achieve. Is it around revenue acceleration, cost optimization, efficiency and productivity? Based on that, you then identify use cases and different AI platforms and tools that can adequately address those needs. Those needs are obviously quantified. There's a clear ROI. And what is also very important is getting all stakeholders aligned from the beginning. The business sponsor, your governance and compliance team, that technology should all be sitting together from day one to architect what this potentially could look like. And when it goes to the board, they have a fully thought through, well conceptualized project or solution to debate, and can then understand the pros and cons and then make sort of the best augmented decisions based on the information that is provided. And where possible, you use AI to augment some of your understanding, which then enhances the ability to make better decisions. So if I wasn't so familiar on trade tariffs, you can get AI to very quickly give you a summary of what's happening. And based on that information, don't ask AI to make that decision. You leverage the information, digest the information that you've just read, and you obviously overlaying your experience, your expertise, and the skill set that has brought you to that seat on the board, you make the best decision for the organization.
Yes, absolutely. The higher level decisions always should be staying with human beings, at least for the next foreseeable future.
Yes,
We
yes.
don't want to be handing that over to AI at the moment. So thank you very much, Nisha. It was wonderful talking with you about leadership through AI transition and judgment. And we look forward to having you again soon. Thank you for
Yes, thank you
joining
for
us today.
having me. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation and hope, people listening in can sort of benefit and learn from this, and very happy to continue the conversation in different platforms and contexts. Thank you.
So for the audience, please connect with Nisha Paramjothi on LinkedIn. I'm sure she's happy to accept your invite and then get in a conversation, learn from her. She's here to help. Thank you so much for joining us today.